Happy Monday. Oh, it's the Monday after Valentine's Day. I hope everyone had an enjoyable and lovely weekend. So I'm going to give our fabulous IT person up there, Lynn, a moment to just switch over and bring up the presentation. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I had my first kind of let's talk conversation around zoning just last year in October or in September. And by November, when I was holding my end of the year town hall, there were so many more zoning questions. We said, okay, we might need to do a zoning 2.0, although this is really more of a zoning 1.0 because today we're going to be talking about the basics as well as how folks can get more involved in the zoning process. I know folks have questions about how developments arise in their neighborhood, whether it's houses, whether it's new stores, whether it's gas stations. Folks have questions, and I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be involved in the process, and not just at the end of the process, for the entire process. All right, so let's talk zoning. But before I get into my presentation, I do want to thank Pastor Michael Smith and First Lady for hosting us today at Indianapolis Baptist Church. I had the honor to celebrate with them for their 163rd anniversary. Did I get that number correctly?
153rd.
100. Okay. Well, I added a decade.
We're playing.
All right, I added a decade. So I want to thank you all so much for hosting.
They haven't been married that long, but the church was established that long.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Let's get it right.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mickey. And I want to say hello to the folks who are joining us on Zoom. Please make sure that you are active in the chat, as we do have someone who is monitoring the Zoom chat. If you have any questions, if there are any audio technical difficulties, we do have someone who is monitoring the chat so that you can ask your questions and have them answered. All right, let's get started. Give me a quick. So I'll let y'all know now how excited I am about this Let's Talk Zoning. Anyone who has heard me talk about my time, oh goodness, almost 2 years on the Board of Commissioners, I'm sure that you all have heard me talk about zoning, talk about the projects that are coming to Clayton County and the projects that you want to see come to Clayton County. And so I'm really excited about the discussion today. I might have gone a little overboard on the slides, but I will make sure that we get out on time. And I do want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to ask questions. All right. So, as you all know, my name is Alaina Reaves. I am the commissioner here in District 1, which encompasses Marl, where we are now, Ellenwood, Rex. I heard we have a couple of folks from Conley, also all the way down to Stockbridge, Forest Park, and Lake City. Now, that might seem like a lot, but we have 5 commissioners here in Clayton County. The chair is countywide, and then there are 4 commissioners. And so, of course, we have about 1/4 of the county, so about 70,000 votes each. All right, so we did introductions. Next is going to be housekeeping. Apologies. Let me introduce my fabulous constituent aide, Jordan Moore. I think that some of you all have likely spoken with her over the phone or by email, and I can honestly say that I would not be able to do my job without Jordan by my side, making sure that all the constituents are heard, that any questions or concerns that they have by email or by phone are addressed timely. So thank you so much, Jordan, for all the work you do. And I keep her very busy. We are very active in the community. All right, so we did introductions, and then we're going to move forward to housekeeping. So as I mentioned, there are chips and dips. There are chips and dip behind me, like refreshments, as well as the restrooms to my right and to your left. For anyone who wants to come grab refreshments, I'll ask that you can either walk behind the screen or around. So, the goal for today and what I want you all to take away from the conversation is to know some zoning basics, terminology, as well as how and when to engage in the zoning process. So, as I mentioned, I've had several of these Let's Talk conversations, including one discussing the millage rate, just 1 month into office, for those who, oh goodness, we're here in 2024 and remember the conversations around whether or not the millage rate would increase. And I will be having another Let's Talk budget conversation this year as well. As I mentioned, Let's Talk Zoning in September of last year. We're doing Let's Talk Zoning 2.0. And at my November town hall, I'd ask folks, what topics do you want to hear for the next Let's Talk community meeting? Well, I heard your feedback. And as I mentioned, one of the biggest things that folks talked about included zoning. And I believe that all of these are included in zoning. Mount Zion Road improvement, sidewalks, protected walking paths, better restaurants, housing, shopping, new restaurants, and commerce revitalization. All of those fall under zoning, so we'll be discussing those today. In addition, folks had questions about beautification, trash on the streets, trash along the right-of-way, code enforcement, keeping Mount Zion Road area clean. And so we have an answer for that. Please save the date for the next Let's Talk community conversation, which is going to be on Let's Talk beautification, and that will be on Monday, April 19th. The location is to be announced, but I want to make sure that you all save that date in your calendar, and I look forward to seeing you all there in person or over Zoom. And anyone who's been to my community meetings before knows that I love good community participation. So I will ask if everyone could just pull out their phones, their tablets, anything where you have an internet or a Wi-Fi connection, and go to mentimeter.com. If you're using your phone, you can scan the QR code. Same for the folks who are joining us on Zoom. Go ahead and scan that QR code and then type in 7275-6633, and that will bring you to the interactive page where I'll engage you all again, similar to what we did in November, so that I can hear from you all, whether you're here in person or over Zoom. What topics do you want to make sure that we're addressing and having those deep dive discussions on for the rest of the year? And for those who do not have internet access or Wi-Fi, Jordan will walk around with some note cards and you can jot them down, and we'll make sure to document them in the slide here. And Lynn is actually going to pull up the Mentimeter website, and as folks type in their suggestions, we'll see that on the screen. So I'll give you a few moments to do that. I feel like we need Jeopardy music. Mr. Mickey, did you want to write your notes on cards?
Ma'am?
Did you want to write your notes? Did you want to write your suggestions on a note card?
No, I'll express them verbally.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mickey. I'm definitely listening. Part of the reason that I use the Mentimeter website is because once everyone submits their suggestions, I can actually download that page and we can filter through it. And this website and the code is available for the next 2 weeks. So anyone who has access to this QR code and to the code at the bottom of the Mentimeter screen can participate, even if they're not able to join tonight. I heard there are a lot of fun things happening in Clayton County tonight. Glenn, can we pull up the Mentimeter website? All right, that link should be working now. Thank you. All right, transportation. We have some transportation discussion tonight, as well as information about the comprehensive transportation plan. We have flyers with information about the comprehensive transportation plan that's going on now, actually. So we have some of that information here. Warehouses, gas stations, data center on Williamson Road. Yes, we will be discussing that tonight. Code enforcement regarding day and night burning. Okay. Materials other than routine yard clippings. Okay. I can make sure that we have that addressed during the Let's Talk Beautification in April. All right. Anything else? Mr. Mickey, I know you said you wanted to say yours verbally.
I haven't got anything at this moment.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But thank you for us.
Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. I got a chair right here.
All right, well, I will give folks just a few more seconds to complete the Mentimeter. And again, as I said, this link will be available for the next 2 weeks, so feel free to share it to folks that you know throughout District 1. I'd love to hear their feedback as well. Oh, and we also have note cards going around. So Jordan, since you have the mic, if you want to read those out loud. So we have, oh, I love this one, raising the next generation of leaders. Since District 1 has the Clayton State University in District 1, I'd love to hear that. Let's make sure that we are including conversations with our next generation of Clayton County, here in Clayton County. And also, since we have the 5th largest school district, Clayton County is relatively young, and part of that is because we have such a young population under the age of 18. And the last one that I have here is gas stations on 42. Why or how to stop them? All right, that's very specific, and we will definitely be addressing that tonight in the zoning conversation. All right, so making sure that there are amenities throughout Clayton County and throughout District 1, and making sure that there are amenities within the community in Conley. All right, thank you. All right, we have some folks who are just joining us. So Jordan will give you access to the Mentimeter app, which is menti.com, and you can type in the code, and then you can complete those. And Len, can you bring the presentation back up? Correction, for those observant folks in the audience who noticed, yes, Let's Talk Beautification is going to be on Monday, April 20th, so actual birthday. Thank you, we'll make sure to get that corrected. And that's why we said save the date. We don't have the location yet. All right.
That's changed from the 19th to the 20th?
It is the 20th, that Monday, yes. So that's Monday, April 20th.
Location to be announced?
Yes, sir. We'll have that as well once we get the location. All right, y'all, let's talk about zoning, and welcome to the new folks who have joined us. I'll just repeat the housekeeping, which is that we have refreshments to my left and to your right for if you're sitting in the audience, and restrooms are to my right, to your left. And I'll just ask that anyone who walks around, if you could walk either behind the screen or behind the camera, since we do have folks who are joining us on Zoom, and I want to make sure that they have visibility as well. we want to see in these Let's Talk community meeting series. I'm going to fight with this clicker. Sorry, Pastor.
It's okay.
Oh.
It's all right.
Okay, so, and everyone should also have a paper version of here, but I wanted to show you just the District 1 zoning map. I'm gonna pull a Vanna White and walk back here. So as you can see, District 1 and the Clayton County as a whole is broken down by zoning districts, and so you'll see that it's color coordinated. So any of the darker yellow that you see is RS 110, lighter yellow is RS 180. You'll see a lot of purple here, which is heavy industrial, light purple, which is light industrial, and you'll see that's along the 675, Highway 45 area, and then you'll see these areas here are the city limits, so the city limits for Morrow, the city limits of Lake City, and then the city limits of Forest Park. Next slide. So I also want to remind folks that we have a zoning ordinance rewrite that is coming up, which is why it's another great time and opportunity to make sure that folks have a very good understanding of the zoning basics, so that when those zoning ordinance meetings are coming up, there were several last year and there will be more coming up this year, that you go in talking about zoning. But first, let's talk about what zoning is. Zoning creates the rules that design your community. So when you walk out of your home, if you walk out into a driveway, if you walk out onto a sidewalk, or if you leave your home and you're right on a busy thoroughfare like Highway 42, all of that was decided through zoning. And so that's why zoning is really the fundamentals about how the community is shaped where you live. So again, zoning shapes the community that you want to see. So some of the questions that I really want to make sure that I hear from y'all is, what do you think about when you hear zoning? Do you feel heard in the zoning process? And are you familiar with the zoning process? And these are also questions that I hope that you all will have answered by the end of this presentation. And I will take a moment if anyone wants to give input. I am very interactive. No takers? Don't worry, that'll change as we go through. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I have a quick question. You talked about Forest Park, Lake City, and Morrow, but the area I live in is Conley. So where does Conley fit into the mix?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So, there are 7 cities in Clayton County, 3 of which are in my district, that's Lake City, Morrow, and Forest Park. Those are all incorporated cities. They have mayors, city councils, city managers, they have full staff. So areas like Conley, Rex, Ellenwood, and even some areas outside of Forest Park, Morrow, and Lake City, those are all unincorporated. So they don't have a mayor, they don't have a council, they have the county commissioner. And so that is why it's my job to make sure that individuals who don't live in the city limits, who aren't represented by a mayor and a city council, that they're represented by not only myself on the board of commission, as your District 1 commissioner, but also the full board of commissioners. So your representation happens at the county level.
Gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Next slide. Awesome. So, I know we have a lot of folks in the room who've lived in Clayton County for a very long time. All right? I'm looking at you, Mr. Mickey. I'm looking at you, Miss Happy. And you've seen that Clayton County has changed. And Clayton County has grown. Well, Clayton County is going to continue to grow. According to the Atlanta Regional Commission, Clayton County will have almost 400,000 residents by the year 2050. That's a big change. Anybody know how many residents we have now?
320,000?
I heard 320,000. No? Thought I heard someone else. I'll show you in just a second. So here is a... Glenn, can you make it full screen? So here's another ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission graphic, which just shows, again, by 2050, the population increase in Clayton County. And you can see that this is separated by density. So this is how many more people they are projecting to move to Clayton County, and where specifically they will move. So I know we had some folks for Conley, so that's 10,000 to 15,000 residents, and that's per section. I believe these are census tracts. And you'll see this Rex area, this Morrow Rex area here, you'll see that it's projected to grow between 20 to 40,000. That's a lot of people that are going to move to Clayton County. And so as we are thinking about the zoning and as we are looking at what Clayton County is going to look like, how are we going to house and have shopping and retail and commercial areas for all those folks, that's where zoning comes in. All right, I heard someone say 320,000. We're actually just a little over 300,000. So these graphics are from the 2026 fiscal year budget. And then again, as I mentioned, we are a relatively young county, so you'll see that the largest bar in this graph is between the ages of 25 and 34. So, and again, here's the population here, but I found this information actually on the CDC, the Center for Disease Control website, and it talks about how Clayton County is metropolitan. I know that there are some folks who have probably heard that Clayton County is rural, and we have been. I've heard stories from folks who live in Ellenwood who remember seeing the horse ranches, and know several of them are still there. Well, Clayton County is moving from what used to be rural to suburban to now large fringe metro, which just means that we are within the Atlanta metropolitan region. So again, Clayton County is growing, and everyone in this room and everyone who lives in Clayton County, we have the opportunity to dictate what that's going to look like. We're going to talk a little bit about taxes, because I want you all to hear this. As Clayton County grows, and we have more people who move into the county, they will help in paying property taxes. And when the county grows, the percentage that you pay for the revenue for Clayton County will go down. So when we see Clayton County grow, that also looks like sharing that tax burden with more individuals who live here. Now that's on the housing side. On the real estate side, that also looks like bringing in businesses and real estate that are also revenue generating. Everybody following along? Okay. Now, I grabbed a couple of these slides from someone who I admire who does zoning. He runs Kronberg Urbanist Architects, and he's done several presentations which are available online, and I do want to share that I have grabbed a couple of slides off his public website. So, community trade-offs. What I just mentioned. Wanting lower taxes. Wanting stable services including police, fire, recreation centers, libraries, and wanting low density. I know there have been a lot of conversations during public comments where folks are talking about what type of housing we want to see in Clayton County. And I talk a lot about density. And so what Mr. Kronberg is saying here in his presentation is that there are trade-offs. Wanting low taxes, you need more density. And you need more density. And if you want lower density, you'll have higher taxes. And we'll go into that a little bit more, because you can't have both. And so we know that there are trade-offs. And so we have to look at the full picture to see what those trade-offs are. So now we're going to talk about how zoning decides what the land looks like. And as I mentioned, we have our zoning ordinance rewrite coming up. I don't have any of the dates for the 2026 meetings, but I hope that you'll scan the QR code. We also have flyers available. I believe I see a couple of them on your table. So we also have that information available for you all to go on their websites, fill out that community questionnaire, and give input about what you want to see that zoning ordinance look like. How do you want to be notified if a development is coming into the county and you live within a certain feet of that development? How do you want to get that notice? How do you want to see that advertisement in the newspaper, on the website? All of that is dictated within the zoning ordinance. All right. So what is zoning? Zoning regulates land use, building heights, what size is the building, setbacks, we'll talk about those more in a second. Density, I've already talked about density, so how many housing units per acre. Parking minimums and maximums, landscaping, signage rules, locations of stormwaters, entrances, exits, egress, all of those things. That is what zoning is. What zoning is not is what specific businesses are coming to the county. That's not something that can be written into zoning. We can say, hey, there's a particular area in Clayton County that we want to see more restaurants, and we can zone that accordingly. We can say we want to see general business here. We can say that we want to see specific retail here or mixed use here, but we can't say, I want a Carrabba's and I want it next door to this intersection. Legally, we cannot do that. Zoning regulations cannot impact renting or housing prices, as in we, as the commissioners, we can't set how much the private sector will be charging for the housing or for the rent. Now, there are funding sources available for developers who are looking to bring projects into the county, but we as the commissioner, we cannot dictate and say, hey, if you're bringing in housing, it needs to cost this exact amount. So making sure that everyone knows what are the things that are in the capacity of the commissioners and what things are dictated by either the private sector or the market. So, what can you build in zoning? Residential, single-family houses, as we've all seen, townhouses, as we've all heard about, commercial zoning when we talk about restaurants, office spaces, industrial. I'm looking at my folks who live in the Rex area, as we saw on that slide with the zoning map. 675 and Highway 42 are heavy industrial. So that is what is zoned there. So that's why you see the warehouses and the logistics centers. That's what the zoning says. We also have agricultural zoning, not as much in Clayton County as we used to have, but we do still have some farmland here and there. And mixed use zoning, which there's been a lot of conversation around mixed use zoning. And what mixed use looks like is that combination of residential and retail, commercial space, maybe below apartment complexes or condos. Yes. All right. I am not going to get into the specifics of Euclidean zoning. Yes, I'm looking at you, Jean-Pierre. I know you can teach an entire class on Euclidean zoning. So what this means is that this zoning was brought to the United States in the 1920s, and it basically separated how people lived. It said, we're going to have houses in one area, we're going to have commercial in another area, and for the area where we're having houses, we're just going to have single-family houses. In this other area, we're going to have maybe 3 shops and a Walmart and parking to accommodate all the people who are going to go to those shopping centers. And for the folks who remember the Atlanta landscape or Cincinnati, or I'm trying to think of other cities where they demolished beautiful historic buildings because the US and the International Building Code wanted to move to separate zoning uses. And so that's why this map that you see here, that is why you have those lines that separate, well, this is actually a great separation between industrial and residential, but that's why you see, where's the commercial? That's why you see that separation of commercial and residential. Anyone ever lived in New York, Seattle, DC? Places where you can walk outside and you have a bodega, you need to grab some milk and you can just walk outside, run downstairs and grab something? Anybody? I think they have like corner stores in Atlanta too. But I grew up here in Clayton County. We had a candy lady. So zoning works on different scales. So we talked about residential, commercial, industrial, but now we're going to talk a little bit about what those buildings look like. How do those buildings create neighborhoods, and then how those neighborhoods create cities. So, excuse me, I'll be drinking a lot of water today. It was very hot. So, I went to an incredible presentation last week. It was hosted by the Parking Reform Network and Abundant Housing. And the conversation for 2 hours, the only thing that was discussed in this, at this meeting was about parking minimums and parking maximums. And what does that look like? And so I know that there is kind of this urge to say, well, we need parking. If we're driving somewhere, then we need somewhere to park our cars when we go inside. But one of the best things that I heard from that presentation is that think of somewhere that you visited on vacation and you were staying maybe downtown in a hotel and you walked outside and maybe you were walking through a courtyard or maybe you were hooping. One of the best things that I heard from that presentation was about how, think international cities like Paris and Italy, when you go to those places, you don't see a lot of parking lots. You see things at what they call a human scale. But here in America, we like to drive, especially down in the South, especially here in Georgia, where we have the Ford plant, which is now the Porsche plant. We like to drive. And so when you're driving from place to place, you need somewhere to store your car while you're indoors. And so, what does that mean? That means we build parking lots. And again, when we talk about the separation of zoning, when we talk about residential, when we talk about commercial and retail, when those are zoned, they're zoned one parcel at a time. It's zoned one segment at a time. And each of those specific buildings requires parking, especially here in Clayton County, because we have a 50, 75 parking spaces minimum. And so when you require parking for every building, for every house, then you're eating up the land. Where if you build densely and you start building upwards, then you have more space not only for the cars to live, but for people. Thank you, Lynn. I think Lynn has been to almost all of the town halls and community meetings that I've had over the past 2 years. Next slide. All right, so I printed out this cheat sheet so everyone should, if you grabbed it, everyone should have it just so that you can see when we start talking about RS 180, RS 110, general business, MX, HI, when we start talking about that terminology, that you all can follow along with what we're talking about. But first I want to talk about residential zoning. And I mentioned density, and I mentioned the ability to build upwards. So I live in a condominium, I live in Marlboro. And I live in one of the few condominium neighborhoods in Clayton County. Well, I live on the 3rd floor. And so the same amount of space that my neighborhood is, probably would have been able to build 20 houses, maybe 30 houses. But instead, my neighborhood houses 130 units, not individuals, units. Because I have neighbors who have 2 or 3 people who live in their houses. And other neighbors who, our neighborhood goes up to 3 bedrooms. So you can have a family of 5 living comfortably in a neighborhood that would regularly only accommodate 30 houses. So when people start talking about seeing more pad splits, I know I've heard folks talking about those, about individuals who are creating essentially boarding houses within single family residential. Well, instead of allowing, let's say, the private sector or the market to say, hey, we know that there's a housing shortage, we're just going to take this one house that was built for one family and we're going to turn it into a house for 3 families. Instead of allowing someone else to do that after the fact in a house that was only built to accommodate one family, we can actually build the housing that we need. So, multifamily. Now, because we're in Clayton County and we are under the flight path, there are certain heights that we can't go above, so do not worry. We will not be building skyscrapers in Clayton County. We can't do that. But, as I said, we are going to talk a little bit about setbacks. And actually, in doing research for this presentation, I found out that some of the history around having setbacks, especially in rural areas, was allowing for enough space to accommodate septic tank systems. And I know that there are some folks in Clayton County who are still on septic. And so part of the reason why these houses have, let's say, 25 feet set back from the curb is based on something that no longer applies. Because while there are some people whose houses are still on septic, and I know some of them say that they prefer it and they don't want to be connected to the sewer and water, we are, again, as I mentioned earlier, a metropolitan area. And so we do know that as we're building more houses and as we're able to accommodate that growth, that density that we need to see, it's going to look like having houses that may be a little bit closer to the street, that may be a little bit closer to the sidewalk. But the zoning codes that we have now says that a house must be this large and must be on, say, a half an acre. And as I mentioned, you all have your cheat sheets, so you'll see the difference between RS 75, RS 110, and that just talks about the residential standards. And anyone who wants to go through the zoning code on the county website, you are more than welcome to peruse that, and you can actually see all of the permitted uses and conditional uses, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to commercial. Okay. I had way too much fun on this. I got to go to Giphy. Okay, y'all, hear me out. I know that we've had folks at public comments, but I wanted to present an alternative. Single family only zoning is a policy that legally mandates scarcity, and also giving credit to Kronberg, urbanist architects. And I say that because of all the things that we just discussed about setbacks, about density, and as we'll discuss a little bit later, about services and how much more services cost when those services are only going to one property on the same amount of space that could accommodate maybe 10 units. And I know we have some real estate folks in the room, I see y'all. We're gonna talk a little bit about missing middle housing and the different types of housing that we can build instead of just single family. And that's not to say that Clayton County needs to do completely away with single family homes. I know that there are folks who want to have a 3-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms and a 2-car garage with a driveway for 2 cars. But we also need to make sure that we're building housing that accommodates everyone's lifestyle. So duplexes and courtyard buildings. And I have some examples that you all can see. So again, giving credit to Kronberg, just wanted to talk a little bit about housing and who can afford what. I don't think I added the median income for Clayton County. But I just wanted to show how much housing costs. So when we talk about single family houses and we talk about those 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes with a 3-car garage, well, to build those on a half acre costs a lot of money. And so builders have to charge more money for that house, which means we are leaving out a portion of buyers who would want to buy a home, but literally cannot afford to buy a home because of the houses that we're building.
I'll just say it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on?
Mm-hmm.
I think I just told that. Okay, I'm sorry. The median income is $58,000 to $60,000 for Clayton County.
So when we look at, thank you, Jordan. When we hear what that median income is of $60,000, we're looking right here. So area median income. Well, currently we are building houses for the maximum income. So Clayton County is building houses that the people who live here can't afford. And when I say Clayton County, I mean developers. The county is not physically building the houses. Do we have any questions? Are we still good? I thought I saw somebody's hand go up. All right. Thank you, Lynn.
Alaina, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Darling.
So,
Yes, ma'am. Jordan's gonna bring you a mic so that and do we have any questions on Zoom? Oh, I see a few, thank you.
Because the developers are the ones that are building these houses that are unaffordable for, say, people that live here. Because, say, I no longer want to be in a home, and I want to go to a nice condominium. And with the rate and the way that they're building at that top end, is there any way for us as a county and with our elected officials to have some input and directions on what we want and what we need to see? Because the idea of condominiums, I absolutely love it. And the condos, those were supposed to be so-called condos next to Mickey.
On Lake Harbin and 42.
Right, and I had Madam Chair, she kind of was like, no, they didn't. But when that developer came to our meeting and introduced those units, not only were they supposed to have screened porches, because that was what caught my attention to that particular property. I can go in a $300,000 home, but why would I go into one and they look like that? But I specifically remember them including a screened-in porch. So do we have a way to direct, to sort of bring those, bring us out of that top end so that people can afford, our young people can afford housing?
Yes, ma'am. And we are going to discuss that. What that looks like is what is happening now. That Clayton County is rewriting the zoning ordinance to allow more flexibility for what types of houses can be built. Because if our zoning is, let's say, attractive to developers, and developers will see, okay, they go on the website and they find an area on the GIS map and they say, we want to build condominiums here. Well, they're going to go and they're going to look at the zoning. They're going to go and they're going to look at this information here. What are the permitted uses? So you'll see the townhouses, you'll see again, there's single family detached and, where is it? Single family attached. And so that's why you see townhouses. Because the zoning, as it stands right now, allows for townhouses. Single family attached houses. And so that's why you see so many of those being built. But if we changed our zoning and we changed our permitted uses to allow, and I saw someone had a question there about tiny houses and even a tiny house cottage. If we changed our zoning to allow for a smaller lot size or for a smaller ratio of home size to lot sizes, then that provides that flexibility. And I also just wanted to touch on, you mentioned wanting to move from your house to perhaps a condominium. When we talk about household types, when I talk about how young we are as a county, you have folks who are looking at starter homes. They're under 35 years old. So they're maybe not looking for a larger house. Maybe they are looking for a tiny house, or maybe they are looking for a duplex or a quadplex, which is the 4 houses on a plot of land. And that could be next door to a single family house. And so we talk about downsizing, making sure that there are smaller homes and condominiums available for seniors who perhaps don't want to move into the senior rental facilities, but want to still own their property. So I touched on this a little bit already when we talked about how you'll see people in their houses, you'll see a single family house with a 2-car garage and a driveway that accommodates 2 cars. Not even comfortably, because then you start seeing those cars who park on the driveway. We get those phone calls. I'll say Jordan gets those phone calls. Well, when we build the right housing the first time, and we build the amount of housing units that is needed for how many people are moving into the county, then we don't have that level of overcrowding where you have, let's say, 3 families, again, living in a house that is specified for 1 family. So all that goes back to zoning and making sure that we are planning for what our housing needs are. So we talked about the population. This figure looking at the folks who are in the room, I've heard you all announce this figure that Clayton County does have a high percentage of folks who rent. But earlier, I talked about how the houses that are being built here in Clayton County, the folks who are making the average salary in the county can't currently afford the houses that are being built here. So if we want to increase our home ownership rates, we have to make sure that there is housing available for every income of people to move into. Single family zoning requires a lot of infrastructure. That's what I was talking about when I talked briefly about services. So you look at these two houses, these are Atlanta prices because Kronberg is based in Atlanta, unless you all know of any $435,000 houses outside of Lake Spivey. So you can see these two plots of land with two houses that are $435,000, $495,000. So that is 2.5 units per acre. Well, those two houses, they have to support the revenue for the county for water, sewer, storm, the traffic lights, the potholes that we also get phone calls about, the police, the fire, schools are separate, county commissioners do not work with them. Well, actually, scratch that because we do not have trash pickup on a county level here in Clayton. But all of those services, instead of being spread out across multiple houses, is only shared between those two. So when we talk about density and we talk about building more houses where there only may be 1, 2, or 3 houses, that's what I mean when I say that county residents can share that tax burden because there are more homeowners on the same amount of land. And I spent a lot of time going through the presentations that are available on his website, and I won't get into all of the specific types of housing that he has here, but you remember we saw the 2 single-family homes. There are also accessory dwelling units, which are legal in Clayton County, but they do require a conditional use permit, which means if you have enough space in your backyard or you want to transform your detached garage into, let's say, a mother-in-law suite, you would have to go through the same zoning process as someone who wants to build 25 houses in a neighborhood. And so there are other counties and other cities that have actually made that process easier. So if there's someone who wants to build a home in their backyard or next to their house, they can do that. And so you'll see on here duplexes. Oh goodness. They also have on there commercial dwelling units, which again, I mentioned anyone who's lived in or visited Chicago or Philadelphia or New York or those older cities that before we had that Euclidean zoning, and so they had things like barbershops attached to the front of someone's home. Or if anyone who's ever gone to a hair salon or a nail salon that's attached to someone's home, well, if we did zoning, if we did a version of zoning that allowed that to be legal, where someone could run a business out of their home, then we're also providing financial opportunities for individuals. All right, so this is just a more clear comparison of having a single-family home, home with an ADU, home with 2 ADUs. Keep me on time. And I just want to briefly just shout out one of the projects from Kronberg Urbanist Architects that we had the opportunity to visit in the West End. This is actually a cottage court. So I know someone asked about cottage houses. And so this is, I think this was a half acre. So the same amount of land that would have built 1 house, they built 4. And so in the back, it's a 1-bedroom. There's 4 houses. You can't see the 4th one. There's a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and these 2 up front are 3-bedroom homes. They're beautiful. I have a video. We can upload that for anyone who's interested in seeing that. But these are beautiful homes that allow people to be homeowners at a price that fits them. And the sellers actually made sure that it was financially feasible for those families to afford based on the area median income. And again, I'm gonna go back to taxes because in May, June, the Board of Commissioners will be voting on next year's budget. And we do know that in Clayton County, a large portion of our budget comes from property taxes. And I've gotten those phone calls. I've heard folks when they say that they want to see property tax relief. And the way that I vision us having, us as the taxpayers here in Clayton County, having taxpayer relief is bringing in more housing and bringing in more businesses. And part of the way that we do that is through zoning. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about housing and residential zoning. And I could not find a good graphic that could articulate how having more dense neighborhoods and having more people in an area actually attracts more businesses. So for folks who want to see more restaurants, more white tablecloth restaurants, more sit-down eateries, more retail stores, for folks who want to see that, the way that we get there is actually through density. It's actually through having more people move to Clayton County. So again, and you'll see this on your cheat sheet, just a little overview of the different types of commercial zoning, whether it's general business, office industrial, and then the last part we'll talk about industrial. Does anyone have any questions? All right. We're actually supposed to have another speaker join us today, so I am not used to speaking this long, but look, I will talk about zoning all day long. So, I talked a little bit before about parking requirements, and what does that mean for a business that is one next to the other. I'm going to pick on the Walmart Pavilion off Anvil Block, which I know you're very familiar with. So each of those businesses, the Hardee's, the Mavis Tires, the Atlanta Federal Credit Union, each of those individual businesses all have separate parking. And that's in front of the parking that's available for the Walmart, for the Hibbets Sports, for the event center that's over there. So all of that parking, instead of having businesses that someone can walk to, when we talked about human scale versus car scale, instead of someone being able to walk from business to business, they have to get in their car and drive from business to business, even though they're still in the same pavilion. And so now, here's the part that I want everyone to pay attention to when we talk about what type of businesses are we seeing in Clayton County. So now I'm going to pick on vape shops. Because I've heard calls where folks are saying, hey, there are all these vape shops that are open. I'm not picking on vape shops because of what they sell. I bring it up because folks are saying, we want restaurants. And instead of the business that we want, we're getting this other business that we didn't ask about. Well, that goes back to the zoning too. And that goes back to permitted uses. So we're going to go to the commercial permitted uses, and you'll see what options are available under permitted uses. And you'll see that vape shops are under the permitted use, which means they don't have to come before the Board of Commissioners, like, let's say, a larger store like a Family Dollar. They don't have to come before the Board of Commissioners. They can go into the Community Development Office, they can apply for their business license, and they can start setting up shop. And so there are some things that are in the zoning that even if you go to every zoning meeting, every community information meeting, every zoning advisory group meeting, even if you go to all of those meetings, you wouldn't hear about that particular development because it can go straight through the zoning process. And I just wanted to provide just a brief breakdown. This is also from the Atlanta Regional Commission, and it is a breakdown of the employment sectors in Clayton. So trade, transportation, and utilities. I'm sure no one is surprised, since 90% of the airport is in Clayton County, that we have a lot of industries that cater to logistics centers and warehouses and commercial services. I forgot what Delta is under, but. So again, I know I picked on Walmart earlier, but this is just another graphic that illustrates when you have each individual business that's zoned and approved one at a time, that's how you start to develop areas that are surrounded with parking lots. Now, what does that look like in the future? It looks like the same area and the same amount of land where we have one big box store and we have a couple arterial shopping areas, we can actually build more. And that might look like reducing the parking. But y'all are okay with that, right? Since we talked about we can either have businesses or we can have parking. No? Yes? Maybe? No? All right. All right. That's all right. That's all right. That's okay. I have some examples so we can show you. Okay, let's talk about the industrial zone. So, similar to what I was talking about under permitted uses for commercial, we also see those same permitted uses under industrial. And this is especially true in District 1. Because if we go back to that map and we saw the Rex Ellenwood area, the heavy industrial, the light industrial. So when we start looking at the permitted uses, and those permitted uses being developments that individuals could bring in by right, then we start seeing, well, why do we have so much truck parking? Well, truck parking is conditional use permit, but we have under here warehouses. We have under here gas stations and truck stops. So if these businesses are under the permitted use, again, they don't have to come before the Board of Commissioners to be approved. They go to the community development and they apply for a license, they apply for their business license, and they can begin building.
Do we not have any way to control any of that?
I want to make sure everyone can.
Do we not have any way to control any of that? Because the development authority is still under the authority of the county, correct?
Well, the development authority is an autonomous board that receives their authority from the state of Georgia. They are actually under state legislation. And so not every development that comes through industrial or commercial spaces goes through the development authority. However, yes, the development authority can recruit and bring in businesses, but those businesses still have to go through the zoning process, again, depending on whether or not it's a permitted use or a conditional use.
So the ones with the permitted use goes to, say, Ejiki's office?
Yes, it goes to Director Patrick Ajike's office under Community Development and Economic Development.
And applies, so we never have any knowledge that they've applied, and now we've got gas station after gas station popping up. Or, so is there any way for us, as a county, our elected officials, to do anything to redirect some of that so that we can control and reduce the amount of these businesses that are coming in? Because between vape shops, nail shops, tire shops, and gas stations galore, we need some relief, because for me, those are huge environmental issues for me. I live in Rex, and all of that stuff on top of us dealing with trucks, because trucks' emissions are more deadly to us than the air traffic that we're receiving from the redirection of planes that are coming over Rex. Where I used to get, I had one red dot. I get reports from FAA on a regular basis to show me the flight pattern. My house went from having one little red line to now it's inundated with red lines, and those are the flights out of the airports. Those are environmental issues to me.
And yes, and so that is, as you mentioned, that is the Federal Aviation Administration, and so they do regulate the flight paths. But with the expansion of the airport, yes, I have heard that folks have seen an increase in flight traffic. So that is not something that is controlled on the local level, that's federal, with your congressperson, perhaps even your state legislator right here and right there. But the permitted uses, this is under the control of the Board of Commissioners. And everything that we're talking about as far as permitted uses, conditional uses, residential, industrial, all of those things are a part of the zoning ordinance rewrite. Everyone now, like right now tonight, has the opportunity to go on that website, and I'll bring the QR code back up at the end, to go on that website and to say, I don't want to see another gas station in Clayton County. I don't want to have, let's say, beauty supply shops or nail salons under the permitted use within commercial districts, within general business districts. And so by saying that specifically, when the new zoning code comes out in 2027, you have now shaped what you want the future of the county to be, because we speak zoning. We're speaking the language of zoning. And this is just a snapshot. I'm looking at you. I know we could talk about this all night. This is just a snapshot right here, and then Mr. Mickey, Jordan brought the mic in.
And I apologize, I was late. So, my question was, can we change the zoning? So I guess from what I just heard, that the zoning is coming up, that we can change that? So they will have to come before the Board of Commissioners to be able to get approval for that?
Yes. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Don't worry. This is all on Zoom, as well as being recorded by our comms folks. And happy Government Communications Week to all of our government Clayton County communication folks celebrating. So earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that Clayton County is undergoing a zoning ordinance rewrite. And so when I reference that we can change the zoning, that we're going through now, I'm talking specifically about that zoning ordinance rewrite. And there is a website that you can go to, and I'll bring the QR code back up. You can scan that, go to the website, and then provide that input on what types of zoning you want to see or don't want to see. Oh, and we also have children's activities if your kiddos want. I think we have coloring pages, we have a slinky, and some fidgets. Jordan's bringing you the mic.
I really don't need this.
It's for individuals on Zoom to hear.
Commissioner Reaves, before we get too far afield here, I want to go back to the housing situation. And the reason all these people are here is they are concerned about their biggest investment that they have made all their lives, that they have struggled with to maintain and have, so that their investment isn't diminished by other housing being moved in that lessens their value. Am I making myself clear here?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to this slide here. So this is half an acre with one house. That's the single family only zoning that we see in the majority of Clayton County. We do not diminish the home value of this home by building an accessory dwelling unit, or by building, if there was another lot here, by building a cottage court neighborhood where we build 4 houses next door to your one house. Your house can still be valued at, let's say, that $350,000, and the house next door which will be smaller because it's the same parcel of land, same amount of land, same half acre, but a smaller home. Well, when the tax assessor, when he in his office, when they appraise those houses, they're not comparing your $350,000 house to the $200,000 house, because those are two different housing stocks. So your house, as it stands, that value will not go down if another smaller and different house is built next door.
My mind don't compute that way. From what I see in value, a person has a $350,000 home, and that builder builds a $250,000 attached housing. The tax commissioner, Ms. Smith, put taxes at the value of that house. So whatever you have moving in to that lower housing perpetuates a lower value. Now, to change that rhetoric, that single-family house compared to the attached home should not be $250,000. It should be $450,000 to raise the value of the $350,000, not diminish it.
So not.
And excuse me, one more thing. Another thing, when they build these attached homes, they put in room for rentals. They don't have rentals. Now you're getting into an apartment dwelling, which diminishes the value of the homes. So, you know, if you want to have the attached homes, then no rentals. But what happens to the builder? He gets cut short of money, and he's got 10 more units to sell to make his profit, and rather than selling them, he's renting them. That's my beef.
Yes, sir.
I'm finished on that subject.
Yes, sir. So I believe Mr. JP had, Mr. Jean-Pierre had his hand up. So a few things. So the tax commissioner, Ms. Danielle Smith, she collects the taxes. I'm sure you all get those lovely envelopes in the mail that says that your tax bill is due. The tax commissioner collects. Mr. Emmett George, who is the county's tax assessor.
I know them all by name.
Yes, sir. He and his team, they are actually the one who appraises the houses based on a state formula that determines the valuation of a home. And he and I have sat down and had long conversations about how houses are compared to one another. So if you have a 2,000 square foot home, that's $350,000, and there are 3 houses just next door to you, but each of those houses is 1,000 square feet, so 3 houses, whether they're tiny houses or they're attached, those houses will not be appraised at the same level as your $300,000 house. So it does not, and I will happily have Mr. Emmett come and explain in more detail. But to my understanding, it should not affect the value of your $300,000 house. And the reason that we want to have a $300,000 house next door to 1,000 square foot homes that are $100,000 is because there are individuals who can't afford $300,000, but they can afford $100,000. And so when you talk about townhouses being built, and some of them maybe sit vacant, if those houses were priced accordingly and they were sized to fit the needs of the population, then there wouldn't be as many vacancies. But part of the problem is if we have a zoning code that mandates that someone who is building single detached townhouses, that each of those townhouses must be 1,500 square feet. For a developer to get his or her money back, he has to price those to make those numbers work out. To say, if I can only build 5 houses, and those 5 houses are 1,500 square feet, then he is limited to how much he can charge for each of those individual townhouses. But if we say on that same piece of land, I wish I had a whiteboard. If he says on that same piece of land, instead of building 5 houses, you can build 10 or 15, then the price point of those houses goes down. But even though that price of those houses next door, even though those went down, it doesn't affect your property value. I hope that answers your question.
Please state to these people, they talk about taxes in here, and everybody can go to the tax, where you can not deny,
The appeal, yes, the tax appeals, yes.
the tax appeal, but you have to bring proof, and you have to bring proof of taxes around, and now you're telling me that the builder can go the other way. That's what you're telling me. And I'm gonna say this, I'll shut up. But if you've got 95% of the people in here convinced that you're doing, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
I don't want to get too into the weeds about taxes. We'll have a whole separate conversation about that. I will hopefully be able to bring Mr. Edwald back to talk specifically about taxes and tax values and tax appeals. I will have someone who is an expert come speak on that. I have JP and then Ms. Darling, we'll come back to you, but JP's next.
Our tax commissioner is going to be in Sonia Singleton on Thursday. If you guys want to hear from the tax commissioner, she'll be at the Sonia Singleton Center on Thursday between 2 and 3:30.
Thank you, Ms. Darling. So to repeat that, Tax Commissioner Danielle Smith will be having a Get to Know Your Taxes event at the Sonia Singleton Gregory Senior Center this Thursday from 2 to 3:30. And she is the subject matter expert on tax collection and hopefully can better address your question. JP?
All right, good evening, thank you. So one question that I want to ask is, I want to ask if you were going to talk about, because I know a lot of people have been talking about, hey, so I see that there's the zoning here, how do we actually change it, right? And I just want to know if you were going to touch on, because I want to share just quick tips for everybody. So if you could go to the slide with the, just where it shows the commercial zoning or residential, any of them that shows the entire code. Any of them that has the code. Because basically, all I want to say is that, so being able to impact and change your zoning code, they make it difficult intentionally, but there's a very easy way for you to be able to break it down. Go to the next one. Perfect. All right, so zoning code is broken down to 4 different areas. They're your districts, right? That's what she's been talking about this entire time on the sheet. Those are the agricultural, residential, mixed-use, commercial, right? That basically dictates what exactly is this district supposed to be. Afterwards, you've got your permitted uses. Those are permitted uses are those uses that basically you can build any of these different things inside of this district. They don't have to go to the board. It's automatic. No questions asked. Permitted uses. Then you have something called your conditional uses. Conditional uses, which is a CUP in zoning language, all that is basically where you have to go to the zoning board in order to ask to get this done. So what's very important is that whenever you see this on the Clayton County website, it shows these districts, it shows that, hey, this is an agricultural zone. It tells you it in the zone, the district intent. Then you look at the permitted uses. These are all the things that are added. So they were talking about vape shops, they're talking about all these other things. If you see in the permitted use, a business owner that goes to that area, they cannot, the county cannot legally come after them because the county's saying, hey, you were allowing this. But then the conditional uses, that's where, that category is where they have to actually go to the county and ask. The last thing I want to talk about is development standards or district standards, right? So a lot of people talk about like, hey, I want this location to look really pretty, right? Or hey, there's a parking lot that's up here, or hey, there's no sidewalks, or there's vinyl siding that I don't like. A lot of those decisions are in your development standards, right? And so in those development standards, they can be as vague or as specific as you'd like. What's happening right now is that, I'll just do one other question. Actually, how many of you guys remember or have been to or know of communities where you had doctors, lawyers, plumbers, people all living in the same area? How many people know or know of that or been to communities like that? Yeah. Right? So that being the case, that was how we used to do code in the past, right? What's happened though is that you have to go drive everywhere, go to these different places. That's what the commissioner was talking about with Euclidean zoning, right? Basically, it separates every single use. So that means that you live in one place, then you got to drive to the school one place, then you got to drive someplace else. And what's happening in planning and zoning all across the United States is that they're finding that it's extremely unhealthy for people. So this is why there are things like the zoning rewrite, which he's talking about, where now it's as residents here, it's up to us to say, okay, we understand that these zoning things are not helping us, so let's go ahead and change what's our permitted uses. Let's go ahead and change what's our conditional use permits and different things. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context for that, and I'll stop. So.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. As I mentioned, JP could also make this presentation and has nationally. All right. Oh, we have one more question here, and we're doing okay on time. So once we get through industrial, we'll talk more about the zoning process and how you all can be involved.
Yes, I was going to ask a question about when the builders come in there and they buy the houses up, and they build the houses up, they might be a 2-story, they go up to 3-story, or maybe 4. And your house is maybe $150,000, and they'll build a house, maybe I said $300,000, $400,000. My thinking is your taxes goes up. Does it?
Not necessarily.
I'm asking a question.
Not necessarily. So this is why I want to leave that answer to the tax assessor. Because what they will tell you is how those houses are compared. Are they the same size? Do they have the same character? It's not always about the price point. There's a specific formula that the tax assessor uses.
That's the reason why my friends moved out of DeKalb County in Atlanta, Georgia. They had houses built all the way down the street, and they had a nice house too. But it was a fairly new house, and they couldn't afford to pay that taxes, so they moved out. It shouldn't be.
So there may be other factors in place, not about the houses that were built immediately next door to their home, but the houses that were built around it or other factors. Ms. Paris, can I put you on the spot? All right. Do you want to introduce yourself and your role?
Good evening, my name is Paris Hudnall. I do sit on the Tax Commission's board. I know taxes is a big thing. And with building growth in the county, the tax assessor does a mass appraisal. So if your home is, I'm gonna say, is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, valued at $200,000. A builder comes in and within almost 2 miles radius, they build homes that are $300,000. If your property is quote unquote bulk into that mass appraisal and say your taxes went from being $2,000 a year to $2,500 a year. That is one of the reasons why Mr. Mickey was saying the appeal process. Because a lot of times they do look at bed and bath, but if your home is in average condition, that property is in good condition or excellent condition because it may be new. You need to make sure you identify and let them know that these are not apples to apples. So the adjustment can be made within that. Townhouses usually are valued with townhouses, not with single family homes. So if we do get other styles of homes built in Clayton County, I'm sure they will have to update their metrics and how they're going to evaluate those other types of properties. But what I have seen, and not just on the tax assessor, but as a real estate professional, people do not file an appeal. So if you feel like your taxes are gone up and that's not equal the value of your property, and you feel that your property is being judged based on the surrounding new building around it, file the appeal. And not only file the appeal, go through with it. Over half of the people don't go follow through. They don't follow through. Because if you talk to the person that is your tax assessor, they are on your bill, you all can have a conversation. Say, hey, 123 Main Street is my house, but 12 Smith Street around the corner, they just built that house, and it's younger than my house, the yard is brick front, and I don't have all of that. And then they can talk to you about the appropriate adjustments if some can be made. And what I'm finding is that we're not taking action on that because we assume, I don't want any more building because I don't want my taxes to go up. It's a double-edged sword, like the commissioner says. You're either going to pay higher taxes, and we're going to stay like we are, or we're going to add some building and some amenities within Clayton County, and understanding your taxes are gradually going to go up until we can hopefully level off with some commercial building and to bring in some more revenue. That's just facts, but I do encourage people to look at their tax assessment notice, file an appeal. Last year we did 4 classes on there, 4 within, and all of them was in Clayton County. This year we're planning on doing 3 to 4 in person and some on Zoom. That's what needs to be done, because if you feel like it's not fair or it's going up because of new construction in your area, you definitely need to talk to your assessor and file your appeal. And it is appropriate documents you need to have to do that. So that's my spiel. Anybody have any questions? I'm here to answer any question they have.
And Ms. Paris, I believe those meetings are open to the public. They're
every second and fourth Wednesday. The tax assessor board meeting is open to the public. It starts the work session is at 9. The meeting usually start right after, so maybe about 9:15 or 9:20. But they are open to the public.
at 112. Y'all are at 112 Smith Street.
At one, no, we're at the courthouse.
Courthouse. All right.
So
So
it was the tax. We're on the 4th floor, and the tax commission is on the 1st floor.
all right. So for folks who have very specific questions that they want to direct to the tax assessor, those meetings are on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mr. Mickey and Brother Arthur.
Well, let somebody else go first. I can wait. I can wait anybody down.
Commissioner Reaves, I'm not a Clayton County resident, but I lived in Clayton County, I guess about 30 years ago. I want to give you a little history about Antioch East Baptist Church. Actually, we moved from Atlanta because developers wanted our property. We were sitting on 3.5 acres. And on that 3.5 acres, we probably had over a half an acre that was undeveloped because they had put in a major sewer line, so you couldn't build on top of it. A developer came in and built 58 units on, I would say, about a 2.5 acre lot. My biggest concern about zoning and high density housing is the impact that it'll have on your other services, on your fire safety, on your schools, which have the major impact, on your medical. We, the regional committee, only design hospitals to serve X amount of people. and we're coming in with these high-density housing units, and we're succeeding the capacity of our hospitals and of our schools. When the county sits down and review the zoning, will they take into consideration all of these facts, or will they, be able to pull up the data to make decisions that will support?
Yes, absolutely. So I hear your concern, and Lynn, can I go back 3 slides? I clicked over so I could pop in the Zoom. So when you talk, one more forward. So when we talk about services and services that need to be provided, there are 2 ways that those are addressed. And one of those is the density that we've been talking about. Because right now, these 2 lots that have just those 2 houses, those 2 houses, they are shouldering the entire burden for all of the services. So those houses are, nicely priced, almost $500,000. But these 2 houses cannot, just with, because properties are appraised at 40% of the home value times the millage rate. So those 2 houses, they can't pay to support all of those services, the water, the sewer. We talk about paving and repaving, and I have a couple slides about some of the transportation updates further down. But when we build more houses, yes, there will be additional use of services, but there are also more people paying into the revenue that comes to the county to pay for those services. Also, earlier this year, Clayton County did approve impact fees, which means I'll talk about them very, very briefly. So we just talked about something. But impact fees basically mean that any new development, once those impact fees go into place, any new development, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, a portion, they will pay a portion specifically for services. So when we think about commercial properties, and especially again in District 1 where we do have a lot of warehouses and logistics centers, so we do have an oversized share of truck traffic. Well, when we talk about those new facilities that will be built, they will be paying additional fees to cover the cost of the wear and tear that they have in Clayton County. And I'm not picking on trucks, I'm just stating that we do have a lot of truck traffic in Clayton County. Okay, so I do want to get through industrial and the process, and then we can open back up for questions. And there were a few questions in the chat I wanted to make sure that I addressed about accessory dwelling units. Is that for Ms. Trina? Hi, Trina. So yes, so I have an entire packet from the AARP that they have that has sample legislation that Clayton County can review and to possibly bring forward to have an easier process for individuals who want to bring accessory dwelling units to their backyard or to their neighborhood. So yes, it is possible for us in Clayton County to have a process to make it easier for people who want to bring in accessory dwelling units. And tiny home communities they're not currently illegal, but they would be very hard to build because they would need to go through not only the conditional use process, but they would also have to go before the variance board, the Board of Zoning Appeals. And we have a question about Fort Gillum and the data center that is being built there. That is not even the first time that question has been asked tonight. I will address that when we get to industrial. How to create zoning changes. All right, Mr. Robinson, how to create zoning changes to accommodate current residential development. I was not going to touch on this. I don't have a slide on infill development, but if you see in one of the previous slides where we talk about a single-family home that has an accessory dwelling unit in the back and that has a cottage court next door that was perhaps an abandoned home, or perhaps I've seen some homes that have suffered from a fire and the homeowner decided not to rebuild. And so those vacant lots or lots that have that are in the process of being condemned, if they are in a residential area, instead of building a new neighborhood that will bring in 4 new houses, what we could do is the residential neighborhoods that are already in place, we can build houses in those developments. And so that's how we can build more residential houses in developments that already exist. Someone said, oh, I hope I answered your question. I'm the commissioner for Conley. So I represent Conley, that is east of Jonesboro Road, State Road 54. All right. Thank you, everybody who's joining us on Zoom. I promise I will answer your questions, and I will get back to the Fort Gillum question once we talk about industrial uses. All right, Lynn, can you help me out? All right. So, thank you, JP, for that overview about permitted uses, because again, in District 1, we have a lot of heavy industrial and light industrial. And everything that is a permitted use on the previous slide for light industrial, all of these permitted uses, this long list, it is also permitted uses for heavy industrial. And so what that means is existing neighborhoods that are, let's say, alongside Grant Road, or neighborhoods or individual homes that are along Highway 42. Some of those areas are zoned heavy industrial, and because they're currently zoned heavy industrial, that means that if someone wanted to build, oh goodness, I saw something on here that said, let's see, yeah, towing, trucking, wrecking, impound service. I saw something on here that said blasting. If someone wanted to build those, they don't have to come before the Board of Commissioners. And so that's why it's incredibly important that we are looking at the zoning map as a whole, and specifically for your neighborhood, so that you'll know if your neighborhood is zoned next to heavy industrial, there may be projects that are being built that did not come before the Board of Commissioners because our zoning code says, oh, well, that's what we want to build there. That's what makes sense to currently build there. And so until we update the zoning, which we are doing now, and everyone again in this room have the opportunity to comment on what they want to see that zoning look like for the future, then we can make those changes. All right, we're going to talk about data centers. We're only going to talk about data centers for about 10 minutes. So I know the folks in this room, y'all have heard about the data centers that are popping up all across Georgia, and there's a lot of reasons why data centers are coming to Georgia. So for 20 plus years, Loudoun County in Virginia has been Data Center Alley, where there have been data centers operating for 20 years. And as we see the uptick in artificial intelligence, so think ChatGPT, think all of the flyers that I've seen with the green fuzzy backgrounds, you know, folks who are using AI, as those demands increase, there needs to be servers somewhere that can support that capacity. And what that looks like is data centers. So there are 2 data centers currently in Clayton County. There's one at Fort Gillum, which I know we have someone in the Zoom who had a question. So the Fort Gillum data center was approved by the Forest Park Development Authority. And so we talked about how development authorities are autonomous bodies. They can be on a county level, but they can also be on the city level. So Forest Park has a development authority, and they approved the construction of a data center campus within Fort Gillum. Now, we've gotten the calls from folks who live in Forest Park, just outside of the Forest Park city limits, as well as Conley, who have heard and felt some of the vibrations since they're doing the construction and they have to blast through the rock. We're in Georgia. We have quarries all over. Any development would have needed to blast through the rocks. And I do want to give kudos to the city of Forest Park for the announcements that they did, providing a schedule to residents around the blasting schedule. It was available on Facebook and they sent it out via email. And I know that doesn't cover everyone. I know not everyone saw it on Facebook or received that email, but I do want to give the city of Forest Park kudos for providing that schedule and those alerts and announcements around when that, I don't want to say demolition, but when that blasting was happening.
Still happening.
Yes, and those questions can be addressed to the City of Forest Park Development Authority. Now, for the folks who are here in Ellenwood, I'm sure you all know that there is also a data center that is being built on Williamson Road within the Ellenwood Planned Unit Development. Now, planned unit development is a whole separate district that we did not even talk about. We talked about residential, commercial, and industrial. Those are the only districts that we talked about. There is if you go to the county website, you will see the thick stack of zoning districts that are applicable here in Clayton County. We're going to talk briefly about planned unit developments, and it basically says that this area in Ellenwood between Anvil Block 675 up into the county limits where the county borders DeKalb to the north and Henry County to the east, that is a master plan community, planned unit development. So, this brown that you see here, this is Williamson Road, this is Dunn Road, which borders 675. In 2023, there was a text amendment to the Ellenwood Planned Unit Development that allowed, under permitted uses, a data center. And so I know folks had questions about when was there a vote for the data center. And so that's why it's so important when we know the fundamentals of zoning and that we know about permitted uses and we know about items that have come up under conditional use permits. Well, I did some digging, and back in February 21st of 2023, there was a zoning item that was on the agenda that changed the boundaries and changed some of the residential requirements for the Ellenwood PUD. And within that text amendment, you'll see here, permitted uses data center, including a parcel within the Ellenwood PUD that was designated to be a data center. I know that's a lot. And it is incredibly important to me that everyone in this room, everyone in District 1, everyone in Clayton County feels that they have a voice in the zoning process and that they are heard throughout this entire process. So being able to come to the meetings on the third Tuesday of the month and to review the agenda, like some of the folks in this room, I know you all do. Y'all come to public comment and you come speak at the public hearings. But being able to read through the agenda and to see to see what items are being listed under permitted uses. And I know we have some folks who are also joining from Ellenwood there have been a lot of conversations around what the Ellenwood PUD, what the master planning for the Ellenwood PUD, what it initially was here, that has residential, but not only single family residential, but multi-family residential, movie theater here, some additional mixed use. So there were many items. This was back in 2006, 2010 that this was developed. And over the past 20 years, there were a lot of changes to that Ellenwood PUD. And so it's incredibly important that we, as active and engaged residents, that we are able to follow the zoning process and participate to discuss what we do and don't want to see. So,
This
Just that.
Well, hold on, because Jordan's gonna bring you the remote, the mic. So, I came onto the board in July of 2024. And in October, there was a application for a variance request for the data center. Well, this was not an approval of the data center. This was a vote on whether or not they could build to a certain height and to a certain square footage. As I mentioned before, in February 2023, the data center itself was listed under permitted use and was approved then. So I just wanted to provide that context because I know folks that have questions. We see what's happening in DeKalb with the data center that's being built. Please don't come for me, DeKalb. The conversations around the data center, the proposed data center off Loveless Place in DeKalb. There have been a lot of meetings. There's been an entire conversation with their zoning commission. You have a zoning advisory group, they have a zoning commission. They have had entire meetings about what regulations on data centers would look like before any data center was ever built in their county. And I've heard from the folks in Clayton who said, well, where's our opportunity to come to the meeting and say that we don't want a data center? Unfortunately, that conversation happened some time ago. But now that we know the process, and now, just a few slides, we'll go over when those meetings are and how you can come out to those meetings. JP, make it quick.
Super quick. All right, so just, she moved it down to the court, Commissioner went down the court. I want to try down the UP, right? So basically, we have our zoning map, right? And that zoning map that she was talking about is the fact that they had that district, that PUD district that was there. In that PUD district, they use that zoning tool. And this is a tool that everybody should know about, text amendments. All that is, and you can advocate for this, you want to have a text amendment that is a change to the permitted uses to add or remove something. So she's going to talk, the commissioner's going to talk about the zoning, the ZAG advisory group or the zoning meetings, but specifically when she's talking about that text amendment, that's what happened with the data center. They added, someone came to the board before. They said, hey, we want a text amendment to add a data center as a permitted use, and therefore that was now there. There's no need for a commission. So text amendment, but that's something that everybody can keep in mind. That's a tool that you can use when advocating for things in your community.
Thanks, Jean-Pierre. So when we talk about the zoning ordinance rewrite and the overhaul of our zoning code that's happening, with the consulting firm who's doing all of this research and gathering all of this community feedback, there are things that we as the elected officials and the Board of Commissioners, there are things that we can introduce to make changes and amendments to the zoning code now. So one of the things that I introduced last year was a data center moratorium within unincorporated Clayton County. And so what that means is that outside of the 7 city limits in Clayton County, no data centers can be built. Now that was extended in December. That was extended in December for another 6 months. And that will give us as residents the opportunities to have those conversations, similar to the conversations happening in DeKalb, around what regulations and what expectations do we have for developments, not only for data centers. Let's be very clear, data centers are not the only developments that are coming into the county. But residents should have every opportunity to discuss what is coming into their community. So, moratoriums are one tool that commissioners can do for items that, for developments that perhaps we want to study more. So that was the data center moratorium. And to just get a little technical, when I talked about the text amendments, the text amendments that allowed permitted uses for data centers, there were 6 other parcels within the Ellenwood PUD that also allowed data centers under a permitted use. So the property, for instance, off Anvil Block and Boulder Crest Road, there was potential interest in someone to develop a data center there. Why? Because that is the best and highest use for that land. Instead of them building houses that cost a lot of money, Instead of them building a big box store that would cost them a lot of money to build and to staff, data centers bring in a lot of money. And the people who are building them, they know that they're going to bring in a lot of money. So when developers look at the zoning code in Clayton, they want to see, this is a generalization, what is the smallest amount of money I can put into development, and this is just how business works. What is the smallest amount of money that they can put in for maximum profit? So what's that highest and best use? And for that particular parcel, it looked like a data center. So in addition to doing the data center moratorium, Resolution 2025-271 and 2025-193 for the folks who wanted to do additional research. I know there are some folks who are going to want to go online and review these text documents. I also introduced a resolution to remove from permitted use the data centers from the Ellenwood PUD. Now that's very technical, but we all just discussed what permitted uses could mean within zoning. It means that someone could come in, ask for a business license, and that is something that they can build. So when we review our zoning code and we look at what's currently allowed, what's currently not allowed, even while we're doing our zoning ordinance rewrite, we as the Board of Commissioners, we have the ability and the opportunity to review and to make minor tweaks. All right. Let's talk zoning process. I know, we just talked a lot. We talked a lot about the terminology. We talked a lot about the different types of zoning. Now I want to make sure that you all are coming out to these meetings. So we have the community zoning information meetings, which take place every third Wednesday at the Charlie Griswold Senior Center in Lakes Ivy International Park. So those meetings, let's say it's February now. So they're meeting on the third Wednesday of the month. In February would be discussing the March meetings. And so you all may receive a letter in the mail that says there's a development that is coming to your area within a certain amount of feet of where you live. So that letter, that is a mandate that a developer must send notification to residents if they are within a certain amount of feet of a project. But even if you're not within the area of that development, these meetings are open to the public. They're every third Wednesday. So if you want to know what projects are going to be coming before the Board of Commissioners the following month, these are the meetings to go to. Because who is at these meetings? The developers. So I know that folks will come to the public hearings at the third Tuesday meeting and they want to speak during the 10 minutes allowed, or the 10 minutes allowed for and against. But for longer conversations and deep dive discussions with the developers about a project, this is the meeting to go to, the Community Zoning Information Meeting. There's also the Zoning Advisory Group meetings that are the first Monday of the month. And I believe we also printed a schedule of each of those meetings. It's on one page, so you can follow along with what projects would appear throughout this entire calendar. And so that schedule is available, and for our folks joining online, we'll be sure to send you the documents that we have in person. Now here's one I know y'all are familiar with. Third Tuesday of the month, the Board of Commissioners, tomorrow in fact, we're meeting to discuss the projects that have been, remember we're in February. So in January, the Community Zoning Information Meeting, they met to discuss those projects. The first Monday of the month, the Zoning Advisory Group met to discuss those same projects. And again, I'll say the penultimate, the almost final, is within the Board of Commissioners public zoning hearings. That is another opportunity for you to come out and to voice whether you are in favor or in opposition of a project, but there are so many more opportunities to discuss this project. And I said that the Board of Commissioners public zoning meetings are almost the final because there are some projects where developers might request a variance. Or for instance, if we're building a housing project, the Board of Commissioners will approve the development. We'll say, yes, all right, this developer wants to build a housing project. They want to build 6 houses. They want to build it on this plot of land. Well, they'll also have to go back before the some projects will have to go back before the Board of Zoning Appeals to finalize some of the technical details, whether it's their site plan or their parking or some of the aesthetics of the building. So all of these meetings are open to the public, and all of these meetings are opportunity to engage in what developments are coming into your community. And so I highly recommend that for folks who want to know what projects are coming down the pipeline before they come before the Board of Commissioners, please come out to these meetings, especially this community zoning information meeting, so that you can ask questions directly to the developer. And this is just for our folks who are joining on Zoom, this is just a screenshot of the handouts that we passed out. So community zoning information meetings, and then you can see the dates for each of those meetings all the way out through 2027. Now these dates are legally, I'll say legally binding, and the reason for that is because for real estate development, those items have to be published in the newspaper. Those letters for individuals who live within a certain radius of a project, they have, those residents have to receive that letter within a certain time frame. And so that's why you'll see that all of these dates are planned out. So here is the agenda for tomorrow's, you can't see the date, but here's the meeting for tomorrow's Board of Commissioners meeting. So it's the third Tuesday of the month. So we do have some developments that will be voted on. There are no new District 1 developments. I know we are right at time, but I did just want to briefly announce that there is an item on the agenda. It's a public hearing for the road abandonment of East Dunn Road by the Williamson Road Data Center. And it says road abandonment, that's the technical term. However, the private entity will pay fair market value for that road. So that will be on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, and I did want to make sure that folks had some information about that so that no one is surprised when they see that on the agenda tomorrow. I am right at time. I hope we answered everyone's questions. I was hoping that we could leave some time at the end for additional Q&A, and I do want to thank our gracious hosts here at Antioch East Baptist Church for allowing us to use the facility tonight. If you have not already, please sign in so we can make sure that we stay in contact with you, send you our weekly newsletter updates that Jordan compiles, as well as for our folks who joined early at the 5:30 doors opening, saw the review of what we did in 2025. I want to thank you all so much for coming out. I hope that we have answered as many of your questions as possible, and I'll be sticking around as folks are filing out, and if there are any housekeeping instructions, I will pass it over to Jordan.
I also just wanted to say, if anybody wants the PowerPoint, it will be coming in the weekly newsletter this Friday by 5 p.m. That's when I try to send it out.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Whitaker, I just want to, this has nothing to do with what's going on here. I just wanted you to let them know what took place with the Associated Credit Union. So I just want everybody to know that I am Addie Whitaker, and the Associated Credit Union is what I got in. That's what y'all see. In Ellenwood, this is the proclamation that I received, and this is the board members. And to be honest with you all, I sat on the Clayton County Zoning Board for over 7 years. So I'm very familiar with everything that's going on, but I just wanted everybody to know, since this is Black History Month, Addie Whitaker is the one that got the Associate Credit Union to stay here because they were moving to exit 218 in Henry County. And I felt like we are citizens here, we deserve just as good or better. And the Associate Credit Union is growing a lot since I got it there. And so I just wanted everybody to know, since a lot of people don't know how the Associate Credit Union came here, I started out driving in my car and said that we are citizens here, we are people, we matter. I fought to get that here. So I just wanted everybody to know I am Addie Whitaker, and the Associate Credit Union is here because I work hard. citizens.
Be sure to tell everybody that Miss Leonard, who is the manager up there, is a very nice person, and all the people that work there are very cordial.
They're very good, very nice. So I just wanted everybody to know that bit, because a lot of history goes on, go unheard of. No one knows what has taken place. I also worked in the tax assessor's office as well, and so I did several years there, but honestly, with the Fulton County government. So I'm very familiar with all of the concerns that are going on. And if I can assist anyone as well, please don't hesitate to call me or let me know as well. Okay? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Addie.
For all of you.
Thank you all.